Helen Adams Keller was born a healthy child in Tuscumbia, Alabama, on June 27, 1880. Her parents were Kate Adams Keller and Colonel Arthur Keller. Helen's father, Arthur, was a captain in the Confederate Army. The family lost most of its wealth during the Civil War and lived modestly. At the age of 19 months, Helen became deaf and blind as a result of an unknown illness. As Ellen grew from infancy into childhood, she became wild and unreliable. When Helen Keller met Anne Sullivan, her life changed on March 3, 1887. On that day, Anne Sullivan came to Tuscumbia to be her teacher. She was just 14 years older than her puppy Helen. Anne believed that the key to reaching Helen was to teach her obedience and love. Anne had bought a doll that the children at Perkins had made for her to take to Helen. By spelling DOLL into the child's hand, she hoped to teach her to connect objects with letters. Helen quickly learned to form the letters correctly and in the correct order, but she didn't know she was spelling a word or even that the word exists. On April 5, 1887, Anne took Helen to the water pump outside and put Helen's hand under the spot. As the cold water touched her hand, she spelled in the other hand the word water. Suddenly, the signal had meaning to Helen's mind.
Yes, water. It has a name. Yes, yes. Yes, yes, water.
Helen quickly proceeded to master the alphabet, both manual and in raised print for blind readers, and gained facility in reading and writing. In 1890, when she was just 10, she expressed a desire to speak, and took Helen to the Horace Mann School for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing in Boston. Throughout her life, however, Helen remained dissatisfied with her spoken voice, which was hard to understand. Helen's extraordinary abilities and her teacher's unique skills were noticed by Alexander Graham Bell and Mark Twain. Twain declared the two most interesting characters of the 19th century are Napoleon and Helen. Famously, at the age of 11, Helen was accused of plagiarism.
From a very young age, Helen was determined to go to college. In 1898, she entered the Cambridge School for Young Ladies to prepare for Radcliffe College. She entered Radcliffe in the fall of 19th and received a Bachelor of Arts degree cum laude in 1904, the first deaf-blind person to do so. The achievement was as much Anne's as it was Helen's. Anne's eyes suffered enormously from reading everything that she then signed into her pupil's hand. Anne continued to labor by her pupil's side until her death in 1936, at which time Polly Thompson took over the task. Polly had joined Helen and Anne in 1914 as a secretary. While still a student at Radcliffe, Helen began a writing career that was to continue throughout her life. In 1903, her autobiography, The Story of My Life, was published. This had appeared in serial form the previous year in Ladies' Home Journal magazine. Her autobiography has been translated into 50 languages and remains in print to this day. Helen's other published works include Optimism, an essay, The World I Live In, The Song of the Stone Wall, Out of the Dark, My Religion, Midstream, My Later Life, Peace at Eventide, Helen Keller in Scotland, Helen Keller's Journal, Let Us Have Faith, Teacher, and Sullivan Macy, and The Open Door. In addition, she was a frequent contributor to magazines and newspapers. The Helen Keller archives contain over 475 speeches and essays that she wrote on topics such as faith, blindness, prevention, birth control, the rise of fascism in Europe, and atomic energy. Helen used a braille typewriter to prepare her manuscripts and then copy them on a regular typewriter. Helen saw herself as a writer first. Her passport listed her profession as author. It was through the medium of the typewritten word that Helen communicated with Americans and ultimately with thousands across the globe. From an early age, she championed the rights of the underdog and used her skills as a writer to speak truth to power. A pacifist, she protested U.S. involvement in World War I. A committed socialist, she took up the cause of workers' rights. She was also a tireless advocate for women's suffrage and an early member of the American Civil Liberties Union. Helen's ideals found their purest, most lasting expression in her work for the American Foundation for the Blind. Helen joined AFB in 1921 and worked for the organization for over 40 years. The foundation provided her with a global platform to advocate for the needs of people with vision loss, and she wasted no opportunity. As a result of her travels across the United States, state commissions for the blind were created, rehabilitation centers were built, and education was made accessible to those with vision loss. Helen's optimism and courage were keenly felt at a personal level on many occasions, but perhaps never more so than during her visits to veterans' hospitals for soldiers returning from duty during World War II. Helen was very proud of her assistance in the formation in 1946 of a special service for deaf-blind persons. Her message of faith and strength through adversity resonated with those returning from war, injured, and maimed. Helen Keller was as interested in the welfare of blind persons in other countries as she was for those in her own country. Conditions in poor and war-ravaged nations were of particular concern. Helen's ability to empathize with the individual citizen in need, as well as her ability to work with world leaders to shape global policy on vision loss, made her a supremely effective ambassador for disabled persons worldwide. Her active participation in this area began as early as 1915, when the Permanent Blind World Relief Fund, later called the American Braille Press, was founded. She was a member of its first board of directors. In 1946, when the American Braille Press became the American Foundation for Overseas Blind, now Helen Keller International, Helen was appointed Counselor on International Relations. It was then that she began her globe-circling tours on behalf of those with vision loss.
During 7 trips between 1946 and 1957, she visited 35 countries on 5 continents and she met world leaders. In 1955, she embarked one of her longest journeys through Asia. Wherever she traveled, she brought encouragement to millions of people. Helen was famous from the age of 12 until her death in 1968. Her wide range of political, cultural, and intellectual interests and activities ensured that she knew people in all spheres of life. She was honored around the globe and garnered many awards. She received honorary doctoral degrees from Temple and Harvard universities in the United States, Glasgow and Berlin universities in Europe, Delhi University in India, and Witwatersrand University in South Africa. She also received an honorary academic award in 1955 as the inspiration of the documentary about her life, Helen Keller and Her Story.
Helen suffered a stroke in 1960 She lived quietly at Arkham Ridge, her home in Westport, Connecticut. Helen Keller died on June 1, 1968 at Arkham Ridge, a few weeks to become her 88th birthday. Her ashes were placed next to her companions Ames Sullivan Macy and Polly Thompson in St. Joseph Chapel of Washington Cathedral.